Hey guys, it's Chris. So let's peel back the layers then. I'm going to share with you a coaching case study. I'm going to do what very few coaches are actually prepared to do, and I'm going to share with you exactly how I get the results that I get with my clients and what my approach is with them. So in this case study, I'm going to share with you how at 53, Craig got into the absolute shape of his life through the systems that I created for him and I coached him through. So let's take a look at Craig then. So this is Craig where he started. He came into coaching determined to actually get into his best shape in his 50s. Typical of my clients, he was a busy business owner. He was stuck in a rut though of eating quick and convenient foods. You know what it's like when you've had a really busy day. The last thing that you'd feel like doing is cooking, but especially if you're the person that's got the highest amount of responsibility. And actually, you also might be doing even more work on an evening. And he dealt with his stressful days with a nightly drink. So he got stuck into a rut of finishing work, walking through the door, grabbing a beer, grabbing a glass of wine, letting that turn into 3, 4 drinks, 5 drinks, whatever, every single day. And this is really typical. We fall into these patterns without even knowing it. The minute we walk through that door, we're already in a spot where just subconsciously it becomes something that we do. We're not even having to think about it. And this now becomes a crutch that we rely on. And that's definitely where Craig felt that he was. Now, really successful in his own world, running multiple businesses, obviously huge demands on his time. But prior to coaching, he'd made a personal decision to start removing alcohol and transform his life. This was all part of his journey to leveling up and bettering himself and looking and feeling the way that he wanted to, because where he started with coaching, and I remember him saying this, he looked and felt old, which was another reason why he wanted to make 2023 the year that he focused on his health, his mental and physical well-being, and also on his fitness. And this is the thing, guys, as we get older, we actually start to look at things in a lot more of a sort of black and white view. We're running out of time. We've tried all these different things before we need specific help. And that's exactly where Craig was. It's not like when we're in his 20s where we can do absolutely anything we want and pretty much we get away with what we eat, what we drink, not sleeping well and all the other stuff without having that much of an impact on us. Here, as we get older, it's a completely different story. When we get to his 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and it gets even harder as we go up that scale, we start to think about things a little bit clearer. And we start to then think, where do I actually really want to be and why am I not getting what I want and how can I facilitate that? And that's exactly where Craig was before he started. But the thing is, he came to me and it wasn't that he hadn't tried to get into shape. So he'd actually joined gyms, been to gyms on his own. He'd even tried commercial gym PTs. He'd also hired a sort of bodybuilder physique coach as an online coach before coming to see me as his coach. So he tried all these different things and nothing really worked in the way that he expected. It was too generic. It was sort of remove this, eat that, do this, do that, but nothing specific. There weren't a real plan. No periodized approach to training, no periodized approach to nutrition. Was really unsure of where he needed to start with calories. This was something that was brand new to him. And then the same sort of thing in a gym. Like, wasn't fully confident in the gym, didn't know how to sort of get the most out of his training. So we were starting out from scratch. I actually categorized Craig at the start as a beginner, so the programs that I put him through were beginner programs, and then similarly with nutrition, we're starting out, and again, we're trying to build nutritional habits, get all the basics in place, get that understanding of calories, how to track and more, so that we can build on to bigger results. So his goals were to drop body fat, to build lean muscle tissue. His body fat and body shape at the start would be categorized as skinny fat, really. So very little muscle tissue compared to fat mass, so body fat being much higher. And as guys get older, the place that we actually store that body fat is always on his stomachs. We find that. So the higher the body fat level you go, the more fat storage you've got in the area, typically the less muscle tissue that you've got alongside it. It's not a great look if you're trying to achieve a physique. And then similarly for ladies, you start to actually notice that you start to take on some of these characteristics, especially as you start entering into the menopause. You start to actually get android fat storage patterning, you store more belly fat, and you have the same sort of challenge, funnily enough. So obviously different physiological entities, different hormonal entities, but the same challenge in terms of body fat, muscle tissue, and how to actually transform your body. So how do we go from there to here? So this is also Craig. So this is Craig looking and feeling the absolute best that he's ever felt, finally feeling for the first time in his life that he actually looked in shape, and his strength and muscle mass levels being the highest they've ever been. So working through my systems that I created for him, introducing him to weight training, optimizing that, then getting strong, optimizing his rep schemes, and really pushing forward so we start to get those central nervous system adaptations, those musculoskeletal adaptations that then resulted in him obviously becoming more efficient, him actually being able to build lean muscle tissue, and being in a spot that we can push on from. His weight at the start was 71.5. So if we look back and we think about this body shape, so this body shape is actually heavier than this body shape. So 71.5, this body shape has more body fat and less muscle tissue. This one has more muscle tissue, less body fat, but he's lighter. So we sometimes think that, again, when we're going through these weight loss programs, fat loss programs, that simply we need to lose a ton of weight and all this stuff. It actually starts to just take you away from the things that you need to be doing in order to achieve transformations like this, especially if you sort of start dropping down the route of doing classes and circuits and all this high rep stuff and whatever else. I'm not going to delve into that because this is a case study where you're going to get specific insights into what I did with Craig. So the general stuff we don't need to talk about. So this is a dramatic difference from where he started. And this is Craig looking and feeling his absolute best. But his biggest challenge wasn't that he was a beginner to training. It wasn't that he was a beginner to nutrition. It wasn't that he'd trained with coaches before. It was none of these things. His biggest, because obviously I would take care of that. His biggest challenge was that he actually had a really sedentary lifestyle outside of coaching. So outside of going to the gym, his daily movement was so low. He was averaging less than 5,000 steps per day, and he could only really train 4 times per week. Running a successful businesses obviously meant he worked long hours, he'd got a high workload, he'd got demands on his sleep and his stress, so that needed to be managed as well. So we needed to actually maximize his output, and what he did do in the gym became even more important. What he did do with his nutrition became even more important. And this is the thing when you see people say just eat less and train more, eat less and train more. There's only so much of that you can do. You need real specific approaches to both your training and nutrition to optimize both, especially when we've got a challenge like we had with Craig. Now, I worked out his theoretical maintenance calories, which is what I do with all clients when we get started. They're actually really low for a male. So his maintenance calories at 71.5 kilos was only 1,900 calories a day. Bearing in mind that obviously he was also brand new to tracking, which meant we were going to get some of this wrong at the start. He was going to find it obviously a challenge to pick up a new skill. Being really accurate with a calorie deficit was going to be important, but also even more important because we didn't have room to just pull calories at high levels. So sometimes I might be working with a male client and their average calorie intake for maintenance might be 3,500 calories. Now this is easy. We can set up a fat loss phase and we're going to pull those calories down, and we've got loads of wiggle room to run 25%, 30% deficits and start off at a 20% deficit, and it'd be something that they can manage really well and they can train really hard and everything else. But when your TD is that low, you've got less wiggle room, you've got less that you can pull from your diet, with this that then having a physiological effect of you feeling more tired, more lethargic, unable to produce as much force, actually losing more muscle tissue on a diet but not losing as much body fat. So this needed to be really on point for Craig for him to see this level of result. So setting his body transformation program for his photo shoot then. So I'd worked with Craig throughout the year on the basics, so getting him in the gym, training properly, learning movements, took a physical assessment of him as well, so correcting some of these muscular imbalances that he'd got, to get him to a point where he'd got the basics in place to then take on a photo shoot transformation. As obviously his commitment and his understanding of the whole process grew. So because his TD was really low, and because we were going to try and push output even within those 4 sessions, I wanted to try and get those calories higher. So get them higher at the start so that I've got a chance to be able to bring them down lower throughout his dieting phase. So I actually put Craig into a surplus. We didn't start at maintenance. I wanted more movement. and more room for movement in his calories. So I started him at 2,270 calories, and we cycled that down over the course of his 16-week program, over the course of his sort of mini prep, to 1,600 calories by the end. So you can see at 1,600 calories, it's still only roughly around about a 15% deficit away from where his maintenance calories were. So this is not a massive deficit, even though on paper it looks like it would be. Obviously for Craig, it wasn't. For some of you guys and girls watching this video where your TDE might be so much higher, that would be a massive drop that you wouldn't need to go to because you've got more wiggle room with your calories. So as you can see, what I did here is I cycled down these calories. Weeks 1 to 4, we went from 2,270 to 2,040. Week 4 to 8, 2,040 to 1,800. Weeks 9 to 14, 1,800 to 1,700. Remember, we're moving now to lower levels of calories and walking more of a tightrope to be able to try and hold on to muscle tissue while stripping body fat. So I can't make these bigger calorie drops. I can't take away 200 calories at a time. I've got to be really, really smart and look at recovery, look at training performance, and look at what physical changes I'm getting. So just 100 calories as a reduction, which is really not going to have that much of an impact. It's not significant. It was all I could really move to. And then the last 2 weeks of his prep, we dropped down to 1,600 calories to try and eke out that last little bit that we could find for that period of time. And this is the thing, sometimes when you're going through your own transformations, you're going through a prep with a coach, they might just crash your calories from day one, which leaves you 1, little room for maneuver, and then 2, 6 weeks into a program feeling terrible, unable to stick to everything, and then you just rebound by the end of it. We need to slowly edge away these calories, and we can't take those calories to a spot where they start to affect all areas of life, really. So by the end of his transformation, because remember, he's losing weight and body fat, his body shape is changing, his actual theoretical maintenance calories had dropped to 1,750. And this is the other thing to remember, guys. Your weight at the start of your diet phase versus the weight at the end of your diet phase is going to produce dramatically different TDE levels. So let's look at Craig's training program then. So how did he achieve this transformation? What programs did I set up for him then? So over the course of a 16-week program, we've got 4 times per week that we can train. There were certain imbalances that I also was still factoring into his training program. So I went for a balanced split. We did 2 upper body days and 2 lower body days. And I started off with something called linear periodization. So I didn't do anything really dramatic for the first sort of 3 phases. And this is the other thing, guys, as well. Oftentimes you think you need special methods to get into amazing shape. That's not always the case. Sometimes it can be that simple wins the day, as long as it is progressive, as long as we're training hard enough, as long as we're getting adaptations. So we set up an upper lower training split, 4 sets, 10 to 12, with then cardio post-workout with 60-60 intervals. Phase 2, we then drop the rep scheme, increase the weight, so the load that it was lifting, 4 sets of 8 to 10, and we increase the interval length for cardio. So 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off. Working some of those energy systems that are going to be more lactic acid dependent, more aerobic dependent as we're pushing through his energy system training. Then we get to phases 3 and 4. So we then move to a functional hypertrophy program. We're really bringing the reps down now. We're really increasing the load, and we operated a 5x5 system in the upper lower programs. So for his upper days, a chin up would have been 5x5, a bench press 5x5, a squat 5x5, and then a deadlift 5x5. The squat would have been a squat machine like a pendulum squat, and the deadlift would have been a trap bar deadlift. The cardio then changed. We then incorporated intervals and steady state. So this is the biggest cardio change that we made. So 20 seconds on, now more intense. So we use things like an air bike, we use things like a sled, we use things like ropes. 20 seconds as hard as you can go with 90 seconds recovery. So remember, guys, your intense stuff needs more rest. It's not that you do 20 seconds on and 20 seconds off and that's intense. That's actually training under incomplete rest. That's a different thing altogether. When we're trying to increase intensity, the rest actually increases. Then post-workout, we did aerobic steady state stuff. So nice light activity, just simply burning calories. Then we moved to phase 4, weeks 13 to 16. I operated now a push-pull legs upper, agonist, and cluster set system. Again, something completely different, something that Craig had not done before, which I'm going to give you an example of here. So this is an example of a push day using agonist. So when we're talking about agonist, this is now a superset for the same muscle group, but I'm now manipulating what's called a resistance profile, which is where I might train the muscle through a lengthened position bias and then a short position bias, or whatever it might be, whatever I've chosen. So what we can see here is in this push day, we did a high to low chest fly into an incline dumbbell chest press. Straight after, we then did a standalone set, so a straight set of a cluster set. Now, what a cluster set is where we take Craig's 8 rep max, and in this system that I've created for Craig, we do 4 reps followed by 20 seconds recovery, 4 reps followed by 20 seconds recovery, 4 reps followed by 20 seconds recovery. So we're now getting 12 reps of where Craig would normally fail at 8. So we're increasing, obviously, the intensity because we're able to get more reps at a higher load, and then obviously the output. So cluster sets, these are demanding on the central nervous system, so we're going to need reduced sets on these, so we don't need 4 sets. We then move through to accessories, so medial delt work. We work through a one-arm cable lateral into a prone Y raise, again focusing on that length position first, then moving to that short position, with then another cluster set for a seated dumbbell shoulder press, before then moving to accessories for triceps in a tricep cross grip push down. So on a push-pull legs level, his volume's increasing a little bit now, but at a local level for those particular muscle groups versus that sort of balanced upper-lower split. And I wanted to include this as a program because this is a little bit different to what I've included on the training video for both Matt and also for Louise. So I wanted to share with you that method. So achieving this photo shoot level result, then obviously you've looked at the training, you've looked at the nutrition and the structure, and then obviously there's now a few little bits I want to talk about in terms of where nutrition is slightly different for a photo shoot level result than just a Gen Pop transformation in terms of just some of the stuff I've already shared. So we still take a flexible approach to implementing the calorie and macro structure. So ultimately there's still an 80-20 rule, so that leaves a little bit of wriggle room for obviously sort of non-nutritious foods. However, obviously the more those calories get pulled down, obviously the harder it is to get away with more non-nutritious foods, just simply because they don't fit in terms of calorie totals anymore. So if you think about like a bar of chocolate, 160 to 200 calories, that's probably the most that you're going to get away with really when you're starting to really pull calories down at that level. Obviously, because we're trying to produce a photo shoot level result, we need more precision. So weighing out things that we tend to overeat, like carbohydrates, mostly things like rice, pasta, potatoes, weighing them out on a food weighing scale beforehand, and then also weighing out certain fats. So big one, peanut butter, avocados, things like this, oils, cooking oils. We can actually eat these foods without really understanding how many calories we're taking in. And especially if we're trying to achieve a photo shoot level result and we're walking a tightrope like we were with Craig, we've got less wriggle room for error. There's still going to be error, which obviously we can't avoid. So we want to try and minimize that error as much as possible. We also want to avoid foods and drinks that are going to cause gastric irritation and bloating. So each person is going to have an individual response to foods. Some people are going to fare well with eating bread, for example. Others might not. Some people might fare well eating eggs. Some might not. Some people might be able to eat nightshades. Some might not. So you've got to understand your own sort of biochemistry response to the foods that you're eating. So we try and rule out all the foods that you're going to feel bloated from and that cause also gastric irritation. Now, also because we're going through a photo shoot transformation, we're trying to hold on to muscle tissue as much as possible. So use of refeeds becomes important, and then obviously a structure where we're going to reverse diet to prevent any rebound. When you're actually at your leanest and lightest, this is where you're most prone to regaining weight and body fat back at the fastest level. This is true for all diets, for all body shape change that you're going to see, whether it's a massive weight loss result, whether it's a photo shoot transformation. So if you simply just end your diet and you go back to normal eating without there being, as we slowly brought those calories down, a slow increase upwards, you're going to rebound and you're going to find it really hard to maintain results. You're going to reverse some of those results, but more importantly, you're going to regain body fat back faster, often at a rate that you actually don't want. So having this structured reverse diet is very, very important, and obviously is what I've set for Craig for him as we work through that. And a refeed is simply where we get to a point where the diet's doing its work, but we're now starting to feel tired, lethargic, achy, lose a bit of motivation. Sometimes we actually need to go back up to maintenance calories to provide a physiological break, a bit of a mental reset, where we might run a couple of days as a refeed on maintenance calories and specifically higher carbohydrates. So, slightly different to achieve a photo shoot level result than just a bog standard sort of Gen Pop result. So, can you do the same? So, again, Craig is proof that anybody can achieve high level results with the right programming and coaching behind them. And these are some of the other guys that I took through their own photo shoot preps on the same photo shoot day that we captured Craig's. So, again, literally, as you've already seen, guys, there's thousands of results that I can share with you. And I'm giving you these insights so you don't do some of the things that are going to just hold you back. Too often I speak to people that are so frustrated, but you're doing all the wrong things. You're doing all the wrong things with your diet, all the wrong things with your training. You've got no hope of seeing the results that you want because simply the structure's not there, the approach is not there. So you can now do the same. So you can jump back onto your emails. You can start your journey. You can start your journey if it's a personal training client in Sheffield. You can obviously come and work with my team. You can even hire me depending on the times that I'm available. And then similarly, if you're watching this and you're obviously not in Sheffield and you want to work with me as your online coach, work with people all over the UK, then again, you can jump into the coaching levels. You can jump straight into working with me one-to-one, and I create all these private and obviously tailored programs for you in the way that I've just shared with you with Craig, but obviously an approach for you based off my assessment of you. Or you can actually start with some of those done-for-you programs, work through those levels first, and then obviously find your feet before then jumping into structured coaching. But in short, you're all capable of way better results. And as you can see from this, like Craig at 53, phenomenal changes when obviously, again, he tried all these other things. So if you need help, guys, reach out, go back to your emails, reply to this video, jump on the links and get started with your coaching. And I shall see you very soon.